Accessing library computer data.
And to make sure that history never forgets the name Enterprise.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pensky Podcast. If you haven't tuned in before, this is a podcast where we are running through all 178 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, giving our thoughts and feelings about each and every one. Right now we are up to episode 10 of season 3. This one's called The Defector. It was directed by Robert Shearer, written by Ronald D. Moore, and it aired back on January 1st, 1990. This is our first episode from the 90s. Look at that. Times are changing. In this one, a Romulan defector demands asylum aboard the Enterprise with vital information about a possible Romulan invasion. We're going to be joined by Sean to talk about this one, so right after this break, me and Sean are going to get into The Defector.
Are you willing to help us overpower the Romulan B-type warbirds we may encounter? Are you prepared to help us detect them through their cloaking shields? Well, see my problem, Admiral. You ask us for faith in circumstances which are hardly possible to believe, compounded by lies and your refusal to tell us what you know.
I cannot betray my people.
You've already betrayed your people, Admiral. You've made your choices, sir. You're a traitor. Now, if the bitter taste of that is unpalatable to you, I am truly sorry. But I will not risk my crew because you think you can dance on the edge of the neutral zone.
Hey everybody, how's it going? We're back, ready to talk about The Defector. We're joined by Sean. Sean, how are you?
Hey man, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for doing The Defector with me.
Oh, I love this one. This is one of my top 10, maybe top 5s.
Oh, really? Yeah, you had, when we started doing this together, you had mentioned that you wanted to do The Defector. I think it was like the first one you brought up. It's
claim it now.
It's a good one. We might be flip-flopped here a little bit. I'm always a little bit more negative than you are in the previous shows that we've done. So let's start off with this. I think the biggest fact about this one, this is the first show that aired in the 90s.
Oh. Which
is a huge, you can really tell in the way the things look. You can tell by the hair lingo that they're using. Yeah,
they're making a lot of Eddie Vedder comments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the hair is longer. They drink a lot of coffee. What do you, what's your general take on this episode?
Oh, I thought it was a very lean episode. I can't imagine much they could have cut. I thought every character was used effectively. Even Troy was used well. Even Geordi wasn't too annoying. And the bad guy, the actor, was amazing. I mean, he goes head-to-head with Patrick Stewart, and I think he does extremely well. Yeah, I was just about him. Some of the reviews I were reading were saying that he approaches hamminess, and I never thought he did. I thought he was really good the entire time. No, yeah. So he was had a role in X-Files, and he plays a character in Deep Space Nine. And he also plays Alexander, Worf's son. And I always thought he was just, the way he talks is just captivating. Yeah, he's he does. I was looking at his IMDb now. He does car ads with his voiceover, which is fitting. Like he has that kind of I guess captivating, like sort of like pay attention when he's speaking kind of voice. He's clarity and everything. Yeah, I mean he makes over the top work. Is the best way I can describe it. Yes. Like in his eyes, he totally believes what he's saying. He really thinks he's on a spaceship. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. Which is the key thing. I'm finding a lot of these TNG episodes tend to get either saved or derailed by the guest stars that they bring on. Right. I don't know what casting was like when they were making these. I don't know how you can. You're filming in LA. I can't imagine it's that hard to find a somewhat talented actor who will do your guest role for Star Trek, but or your main characters. Right. Yeah. Which is the other thing. It's stunning that I think Clay said this previously. You're in a city of actors, and you have a series that's guaranteed 7 years of work. That's a lot of money for an actor. Mm-hmm. You should be able to get the best if you wanted them. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like, why is this guy only an extra but you gave LeVar Burton a visor and a regular on the... I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Like, why wouldn't you have cast this guy? Like, just make up a character for him. He's so good. Just sign him. Whatever you got to do. No, I completely agree with that. And it's
it's, I can understand where casting would be difficult. Like there's always the old sort of chestnut that some actors audition really well and can't pull it together during the actual recording. And others are the other way where they can't audition well, but they'll nail the performance. I feel like they get tricked sometimes with the first one where people seem to audition well and they bring them in and they're legitimately terrible on the show. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I think a lot of them, they act like a Star Trek villain. They don't act like a villain.
Right, yeah.
Like they accept a certain amount of hamminess based on the original series or something.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Like I forget his name, Admiral, the guy at the end.
Tomalak?
Tomalak.
Yeah.
The way he acts as an over-the-top, very standard 1980s villain is insulting, I think, because villains are more complicated than ha 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 ha. Right, but the way that Gerard acts is very complex, and he's not really a bad guy, I guess. But it's just at that time, I didn't know if they realized that there's other ways to act like a bad guy without being a supervillain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's probably a limit of the 45-minute runtime where you only have your one shot. You have to make it abundantly clear to the audience that this is a bad guy. Kind of like. Yeah. Tomalak does is, I notice it in the way they say lines. Tomalak in this one has a line where Picard's like, "Why do you have a probe around this planet?" And he goes, "We're conducting," and they like twirls his mustache basically on screen. He goes, "Archaeological expeditions," and it's like, all right, I don't know why you needed to sell it like that, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd assume they're recording this. They'll play it back later and be like, he was obviously lying when he said this. No betas always needed.
I know. They don't need Troy to figure that one out.
What you were saying about you thought that this episode was lean, I agree. I think it's really it's focused. It certainly has a point that goes on. I felt I could have eliminated the Data scenes. Data has 2 scenes in this one that.
Yeah.
Well, I think they fit the story. They seem a little bit odd, like especially the one where he's talking with Geordi in engineering about intuition.
Oh, God, that. You know what? I take it back. That scene, I completely disagree with what Geordi says.
Right. Yeah. It's it's another one of these weird things where we're watching a show about the future where people are like pure science, flying around the stars, and the characters will occasionally make crazy sort of statements about like sometimes you don't even need to pay attention to the facts. Like the facts are irrelevant. Which
facts can lie to you. Like, no, they can't. That's why they're facts.
Right, exactly. And Data makes that point. Geordi just kind of shrugs him off. And Geordi turned out to be right, because his intuition was telling them that Jarok was not lying. But it's a weird sort of way to go about what they're saying.
They kind of shit all over their own progress. They've managed, like you said, they're a computer with nacelles, basically, and a holodeck, flying around like gods. But they still have to be like, yeah, but this is nothing compared to being human.
Exactly.
Like, did you, when you built this ship, Geordi, did you use your gut or did you use facts? You had to like stake your life on whether or not the transporter was going to work. Would you use your gut or would you use facts? Like, clearly, it's a fact-based society. I don't think they needed to sort of pad it that much.
Right.
It's still good that we have emotions. I guess we'll never get that Data.
You inferior son of a bitch. How about you go fix the goddamn computer? I thought that one was weird, and he had Data had another scene, I think, and now I can't remember it, but I felt like he had 2.
See, the opening scene was with Shakespeare,
which was fine. That makes sense. Yeah.
I see. Well, I like the Data stuff because Data. He ends up being an observer of Picard in this and what he's doing, and there's a lesson that Data's figuring out about humanity. It's kind of like the B plot sort of mirroring the A plot pretty well.
Right.
And it's Data who goes to Jarok and talks to him and brings him to the holodeck and shows him a reenactment of his own hometown or whatever.
Yep.
And that's when he decides to admit who he really is. I think he was reminded of what he's fighting for. So I think Data serves the plot in that he reaches out to him in a human way, which is ironic.
Yes, I'd agree. Data's the most kind to him, just because he can't obviously, he doesn't distrust anyone. He'll probably think about the logic about whether or not this person is lying to me.
I love when he's staring at him in 10 forward, just not even a drink on his table, just that yellow-eyed freaky stare.
I think I owned, or maybe I didn't own, I think my aunt and uncle owned that little triangle thing that was sitting on the table in front of him. I think that was a game from like the 80s. And I think they just took it and stuck it on there. It's like a little arcade type game, and it's weird to see it sitting there intent forward.
Because Data could probably observe somebody without directly looking at them with all his gadgets and stuff. I don't think he actually needs to be like,
right,
staring directly at somebody.
It's a good question. Does Data need to look through his eyes to see things, or is he just like totally advanced? It's kind of the same thing with It's always a running gag in Deep Space Nine where why does Odo have to look around corners when he could just put his finger around and see things?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Or if Data's connected to the computer, then he could look at a ship's monitor.
Right, and just know everything.
Yeah, he basically could fly the ship anytime he wants, take over, cut off the oxygen.
That's right.
You really got to be careful when they yell at Data.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing he doesn't take anything personally. You can just insult him right to his face and he'll just go on living. But it's I think the episode is clean. I think everything makes sense. What was funny to me is the biggest difference between how the show is developing in terms of writing and where it came from is that if this was I know I bring this up every single goddamn episode, guys, but I'm going to continue. If this was like a first season episode, the Klingons would not have been hinted at all until the very end.
Right. And
they would have just pulled them out of their hat where I didn't remember how it ended, and I was watching it, and there were the two scenes where I couldn't understand what Picard was telling Worf to do.
Right.
It's the one where the Klingons contact them, and he's like, Worf, can you deal with it? And then the other time, he calls Worf into his ready room, and the scene cuts before Worf gets in there.
It's very brief, and if you're not, I don't think you're supposed to catch it. I think that's on a second viewing, I think this episode holds up, because you start to catch things that you might have missed.
Yeah. It's just a maturity in the writing. Like, things are actually going where they need to be.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you think... So they have this theme of Shakespeare with Picard, right?
Yeah.
Now, you and I and the viewers know it's because Patrick Stewart is a kick-ass Shakespeare actor.
Right.
Do you think that they put that in there for him? Or do you think that Roddenberry already had it planned and it happened to be right up his alley?
I was reading, and it was at the request of Patrick Stewart.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he played one of the characters at the very beginning, but he was in a lot of makeup.
Yes. Yeah.
Are we supposed to notice that that's Patrick Stewart?
I think you're not supposed to.
Yeah, I agree.
It's tough because even if you didn't see him, his voice is so identifiable that you kind of think it's him from the get-go because it sounds exactly like him.
He tries to like cockney it up a lot. They don't do any close-ups, or he doesn't like wink at the camera or anything.
No.
So I would love to have been in that the meeting where he's like, please make it Shakespeare, please make it Shakespeare. Hey, Mr. Stewart, we're thinking about giving Picard a hub. Make it Shakespeare, make it Shakespeare.
It's got to be me.
Dying to do acting. I'm acting with this black guy who can't even look me back, and this guy painted yellow, this weirdo with a beard. Like, please, give me something hard to do.
Give me something real. They're like, you can't be Henry though. You'll be this side guy. We're gonna put you in a ton of makeup and dress you up, and Data, who Brent Spiner has the tough role because he has to play that role as Data as the guy.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, which is difficult because you can't be too good at it because Data's not supposed to be very good at it.
Right.
And the other guy who I thought was Riker, but it is not Riker.
No, he was one of the bad cowboys in City Slickers, I think.
Oh, all right. It was weird. He looks surprisingly Riker-esque, and it's like you were saying when I noticed. It's especially apparent in the HD version when you watch the higher resolution. It's a little bit confusing when the camera cuts to Picard, who is watching it.
Right.
Because obviously we know that is not Picard. It's not supposed to be Picard, but he's there. It's a nice tie-in. This is the second script of Ronald D. Moore.
Yeah.
Who I think is going to be going places, probably, judging by the work he's done for his first 2 episodes.
Yeah, his destiny was to destroy the ending of Battlestar Galactica.
Yes, he's setting his sights here. I think this show kind of it has a lot of themes that tie in with Battlestar. actually. It feels like a Ron Moore kind of idea.
Yeah. He had the best scripts, in my opinion. Anyway, he had the most number of really standout episodes,
of quality ones. Yeah, his name is on a lot of famous episodes when you go back and look at them. I'd have to review who probably second in that pack would be. There's a bunch of good people that come along eventually.
Lieutenant Worf, I like him. To be more accurate, I understand him. Warrior, proud, fearless, living only for combat. Exactly the type that will get us all killed if we're not careful.
I was going to ask you, so one thing about the Shakespeare thing, I always notice whenever Patrick Stewart demands that they make Shakespeare's name come up in an episode, he always has some like insightful knowledge about how to better act in the deeper themes of Shakespeare.
Yes.
And I get it that, Picard is the philosopher captain, so it would make sense that he would be aware of Shakespeare. But like the acting tips he gives Data, it's so much of a wink. Like, I'll tell you what I know about this because I'm clearly the best actor on the ship. I mean, the show.
My favorite part of that was when Data listed off actors he was modeling, and he listed Kenneth Branagh as one of the actors because that production was actually going on as they were filming this. So that's why they mentioned
hilarious.
him.
There's a bit later in another episode where Data's asking about acting, and Picard sort of rolls his eyes like, I don't know, Data. I'm not really much of an actor.
Yeah, it does. Because I think later on in the series, Picard is not supposed to... well, maybe not. I get this distinct impression that he's not supposed to be considered a good actor or something in terms of like when he's out on stage.
But you're right. But when he needs to be in disguise and he's on a mission, he's fine.
Yes.
He can't do it if it's pointless.
Right. If he's performing for an audience, he has a hard time with it. But he's quite good at it when he just needs... Because, he's sort of an actor in this one. He's lying to the Romulans, at a certain point.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's a cool little thing if you're looking for it. We all know that he's the best actor on the show, so why wouldn't the writers have a little bit of fun with it?
Right. Yeah. Speaking of the Romulans, we get our probably most in-depth look at what they're all about in this episode.
Finally, I know, right?
They in earlier episodes, they'd actually started to fall into a trap of the Romulan episodes were all kind of the same, where a ship would cross into Federation territory.
Right.
And they would go on red alert, and then another ship would come, and they'd have to figure out what to do.
You had a great line with one of the recent episodes. You said they're always like hiding behind a rock somewhere, popping out. They're never really doing anything.
No, and it's always the same. And you'd think that, I don't know, it's kind of the same as the Prime Directive. You'd think that Federation would have like a standard operating procedure at this point for this is how you deal with things that go on like this.
I know.
And it also... It's sort of the this episode when I was rewatching it too kind of made me worried about the cloaking ability of these races.
How so?
In terms of, you wonder if they're just everywhere. You know what I mean? Like what's to stop them from just basically going wherever they like? Why can't the Romulans just invade the Federation?
Right. They should have had made it so that it costs a lot of fuel, or it's bad for the ships, or it's unhealthy. Or
yes.
They don't like to do it for a reason.
Well, you're right. They got into the one rule they kind of made up is that the ships can't fire while they are cloaked.
That's good. Yeah.
I would go farther. I'd say the ships shouldn't be able to use warp drive while they're cloaked.
Right. They can only coast.
Right. And so you could invade if you want. It would take you 50 years to get wherever you wanted to go, but...
You have to get a running start and use the gravitational pull of Jupiter and slingshot your way
around.
Way too much math. Just turn the cloak off and let's just run all 8 cylinders and just fire machine guns out the window.
That's right. That's my one main... This one... It really was just because of the ending where it's like, the Romulans are like, oh, we got the one up on you because of our cloak. And then the Klingons go, no, we got one up on you because of our cloak.
Yeah.
It's fine for what it is. It's just one of those logic problems that I can't understand.
You think that the Federation would be like, you know what? We're the only ones not using this. Why don't we just use it too? Who gives a shit? All of our friends are using it.
It took a long time for the reason why they don't cloak to come out in an episode too. Do you know the reason why the Federation?
Treaty of Alderaan.
Yeah, Treaty of Alderaan. That was their agreement. Seems. I think the Federation needed to hire some better negotiators for that one.
Yeah,
it seems like that's a huge thing.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, yeah. Why would you not use your atom bomb? Why would you not use the biggest weapon you could, I guess defensive weapon you'd call it?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a good Romulan episode.
Yeah, like you said, they were very one-dimensional before, and through Admiral Gerard, you learned that like they have families, they have meetings, they lie to each other, they have politics. Like somebody probably was threatened by his fortitude and fed him bullshit just to smoke him out, just to get him out of the way. I mean, then he talks about his planet. We get a little picture of the value of whatever. I mean, it really did a lot to define the Romulans.
It did.
Unfortunately, he's still wearing the same fucking square-shouldered outfit.
I know that. You wonder how they fit through any doors at all, or like what they do, or if their shoulders are big, or if it's just the uniform. Like, what's the deal here?
They look like they're always shrugging. Like, hey, what do you want from me? What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? I got a Beatles haircut. I got huge shoulder pads. What I liked about it was, up until this point, you could kind of consider the Romulans and the Klingons to be very similar to each other.
Right.
I think this one does a good job because I can't see the Klingons doing what the Romulan government did to this guy.
Right.
The Klingons would just kind of kill him if they thought that there was a problem.
Right.
The Romulans are much more of a witty enemy, I guess, where they're going to, if they have to out this guy, they might as well draw the Federation into a war.
Yeah.
Which is different than the Klingons and interesting. Even though when the Romulans and the Klingons are in the same room, they tend to act like each other.
Right. They have kissing contests.
Yes, they have the great scene here where he insults Worf, and then Riker gets to show off his Romulan knowledge.
Yeah, of Vadul or whatever.
Yeah, Varul. Only a Varul would speak like that in public. So Worf's line, I made a note. He goes, "You're lucky this is not a Klingon ship. We know how to deal with traitors there." And Worf does a lot of stuff like that throughout the series. He seems to be super proud of being a Klingon. Yep.
Yet, why isn't he on a Klingon ship?
Yes. Why? At this point in the series, it doesn't make a lot of sense why he can't go back to the Klingon Empire.
Oh, right.
Because we haven't exposed why he's not allowed, or that it hasn't even happened yet.
He hasn't been kicked out. I think he chose because of his human upbringing, but he seems like he's read all the books on Klingons. He's got all the, he's drank all the Kool-Aid, and he's got all the merit badges. The only thing he hasn't done is actually go to the planet and join their empire to fight back. I don't know. I mean, if he's such a fan of it, what are you doing on a human ship?
Me and Clay actually were talking about it, and it's Worf is interesting because what they do with him later is right now he sort of has a rose-colored glass view of the Empire.
Totally agree.
Which is cool because he's never been there, and they really start to work that. Like, in the upcoming events, Worf can't understand why the Empire is doing what they're doing,
right?
Because that's not the honorable thing to do, and he's sort of a Klingon by reading about it in books more than anything else.
Exactly.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah, you're right, and that's what I think. If I was watching this episode for the first time, I would think Worf's attitude is a little out of place. But knowing where it goes, it's much more interesting because he eventually learns that they're not as strict as he would have imagined. They laugh, they drink. He had a line that goes, "Klingons don't laugh," and Guinan says, "Sure they do. You're just a fucking asshole." Right.
And in the second season Code of Honor, Riker is surprised that they laugh because he's basing it off Worf, who never laughs. Right. Yeah.
It's a nice character flaw, and it shows he's sort of an iconoclast when it comes to Klingons. And, he has to eventually realize that there's a lot of flaws there, because that's how he negotiates his when he was boycotted from the planet or whatever.
Yeah, excommunicated for whatever they do to him.
Exactly.
Let's see. What'd you think of the? You said you liked the pacing here. I liked the way that they laid out the things that were happening, like the placement of where they realized that the Romulan warbird chasing the scout ship at first slowed down when it could overtake him.
Right.
They eke out these little clues very slowly that keep you unsure of what's going on.
But they use really great graphics too on the computer screens they're watching. They're very simple, but they're really effective.
Yeah, the Romulan thing is cool. The bird holding the two planets in its claws is kind of iconic. It's sort of like the bald eagle holding the arrows. Sort of similar to that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's clear. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I realized watching this. I'm trying to watch it as you would watch it, trying to see it through new eyes when I see it. There really is no reason for him to hold back as soon as he arrives. I mean, he basically shows up saying, I'm just a janitor, but trust me.
Yeah.
Here is some fucking Black Ops information that you would be lucky to have.
Right. I kind of had a few logic problems with that. Like, he explains that to Picard is because he knew that they wouldn't trust him if they told him who he was, but they don't trust him anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
I did it for nothing. My home, my family, for nothing.
The one sort of logic problem I had here is that the Romulan Empire put a lot of faith in the fact that this guy wouldn't know anything that he could tell them. And he seems to have told them a lot. You know, that's what causes them to go into the neutral zone, is because he agrees to tell them Romulan battle plans, how Romulan equipment works, how their cloaking devices work.
Oh, yeah. You're right. That's a good point. Why would they do that? Just to smoke him out?
Right. And I can understand they fed him fake information about what was going on the planet, but he's still an admiral who knows a hell of a lot about how the Empire actually works.
You're right, yeah.
And they're lucky that he killed himself before he could really start to spill his guts.
Yeah, he ate his orange Mentos.
Right, yes. They need to resplice that with the music. Have you ever seen, it was on Reddit, have you ever seen the Mentos theme done to the Bloodsport, the movie Bloodsport?
No.
It's very funny. I'll put a link up in the video for people. It's very excellent, though. Fits perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. But that was my one main logic problem.
You're right.
I think they could have fixed it by... Although it would have killed the ending for me if they had, abducted him back. The Romulans had taken him.
Right. He needs to die. That's such a bittersweet ending.
It is. It's a great ending. I think it's a slight tier below the Survivor's ending, which I think is a little bit maybe it's just filmed better or something.
Yeah, you had a sweet spot for old people, I think.
Yeah, that too. Anytime I can watch an old man chew on some caramels or something, that's something I'm into. Gumming at them. It's
I was gonna say I thought for a minute maybe it is plausible that he would defect. Maybe he thought he could half-ass it, help them, and then get back. Maybe he thought he could salvage his old life.
Right.
But when he showed up, he didn't seem to think that he was ever going to go back. So that's why I thought, well, why don't you just tell them everything? You apparently put a lot of thought into this. You're never going to see your kids again.
Yeah.
Why show up and claim you're a janitor when you're really an admiral?
Right. They kind of balanced it out, I think, by just having him say, he's still loyal. He's I won't betray them. He ultimately does because he feels that it's necessary to sort of end whatever he thinks is going to happen.
Right.
It's tough. I think they did a pretty good balancing act with him, all things considered, I think.
Yeah. I think so too. I mean, these are super picky things. I mean, we're considering the batting record of TNG in season 1 and 2.
No, that's absolutely true. It's even with the best episodes of TNG, you have to ignore. It has to be good enough for you to ignore the problems. That's sort of the dividing line that switches.
Right.
And this episode, I'm certainly willing to ignore the bad for it.
Yeah.
I watched it twice. I felt it didn't quite hold up the second time. That always happens with episodes here, but I felt it was a little bit less strong.
Right.
The second time, and that's obviously because you're reminded of everything that's going to happen.
Yeah. The mystery's revealed.
Right. Exactly. But. Yeah, I thought it was pretty solid. A pretty decent thing. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about this one?
I was going to mention. Oh, this is a side issue. So they have all these pictures hanging around on the ship, on the walls, basically, right?
Sure.
And I remember I was listening to something about they decided in the future they didn't need frames anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, that's an interesting idea. But then when you see in action, it looks like a bunch of college posters just hanging everywhere.
I know, just that old. I when I was in college, I framed my posters. I took great pride in framing those sons of bitches. No, it's
the only one that's framed is a painting of the Enterprise in Picard's office. And it looks like an '80s metal, like a heavy metal van poster.
Right.
Why does it be a goddamn wizard behind it?
That's exactly. I always think a dragon should be like attacking the Enterprise in that picture. It does not look like something that the captain should be hanging in his office.
Yeah, it was painted by Gene Simmons. I'm guaranteed.
The one thing I do enjoy, they do sort of, as the series progresses, Picard's ready room starts to become a collection of things that have happened in previous episodes, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
He's got that Minnetonkan blanket he got from them and Who Watches the Watchers. He's got the paintings that he hangs up. He eventually gets some artifacts that he hangs onto. It's got a nice little touch.
Yeah. One thing I noticed there. So eventually, he's kind of an archaeology buff, and this old professor visits him, and the professor gives him these like clay teacups that fit into each other, whatever it is. And Picard is blown away. Things like 1 million years old.
It's kind of like a version of the Russian nesting doll. It's like a big head with little heads inside of it. Yeah.
But he is so super. He's got a mental boner for this thing. Like he's like a nerd opening up like a brand new toy that's never been opened in its original package.
Right. Yeah.
So that fast forward to Generations, when the ship's destroyed, one of the crew, they're putting a bunch of destroyed shit in Picard's office, and he's walking through like, oh, what a shame, and I love this ship. There's the end of an era.
Yeah.
So he's picking up everything in there, and he picks up these teacups, and he just sort of is like, oh, whatever, and just chucks them to the side. And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't think he remembers what that was supposed to be.
Hey, he was in the Nexus. He knows what pleasure is, and nothing is gonna measure up to him at that point.
You know what the Nexus was? It was a scientific phenomenon to justify getting together the two captains.
Yes, it absolutely was. I'll have plenty to say about Generations when we get to that at the end of the series.
Yeah, please bring me on that one too.
Yeah,
I know Clay probably claimed First Contact.
Yes, Clay took First Contact and a couple others, I think, minor episodes that are coming up. Yesterday's Enterprise, I think, is one of them.
Oh, of course, so we can go on about Tasha's
her toyed ass showing up real nice.
Oh, man.
Absolutely. I guess we'll wrap this one up. We'll come back with our final thoughts right after this break, and we'll give you our ratings.
He ingested a phlogiston chip. He must have brought it with him. I'm sorry, Captain. There was no antidote.
A letter to his wife and daughter.
Sir, he must have known it would be impossible for us to deliver it.
Today, perhaps. But if there are others with the courage of Admiral Jarok, we may hope to see a day of peace when we can take his letter home.
So, Sean, what'd you think of this one? What on our scale of 1 to 5, what would you give this guy?
I'm gonna go 5.
Okay.
Because I think there's only 20 episodes at most in the series that deserve 5s.
Okay.
I think this is one of them. I don't think it's perfect, but I'm going to go all the way to 5.
Nice. It's, I sort of had a little bit of debate. I don't know if it's a 4 or 5 for me. I think I am going to settle on a 5. I'll give it a 5. It's probably, I always qualify them. I'll say it's a low 5, maybe.
That's fine. Yeah.
Which is good. I'd agree with you. There's probably going to be like 20 or 25 5s by the time this is all said and done.
Yeah.
Which is a shockingly low batting average, I guess. Does that
well, 20 episodes, so that's a whole season. So 1 out of 7 you're saying is a 5.
I guess that's good. Fine, right? Because not every... it's funny.
You've been giving 5s out like candy sometimes, where I don't think they always deserve it.
I'm very eager to give out 5s. I think I've only given out 3 or 2 maybe, maybe 2 or 3. But it's funny because now I'm always comparing the show to like modern television, and if you give me the title of a Star Trek episode, there's a pretty good chance I can tell you what the plot is.
Wow.
If you give me an episode of Breaking Bad, a show I equally liked, or The Sopranos, I could not tell you what happened in that episode. And I was certainly inspired by this because Mad Men just wrapped up, and we loved Mad Men. Watched it all the way through.
Right.
I cannot tell you any plot that... I could not tell you what happened in each season of Mad Men. I can remember certain plots. I remember certain scenes. But the show is not built for the memory of these episodic television shows.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, Star Trek was made before the idea of binge TV watching.
Yeah.
Plus, those shows you mentioned ended just recently, so maybe in 20 years they'll have this cult following like Next Generation does.
Yeah.
And I think that it's also something about the types of personality that is attracted to Star Trek.
Right,
people that are a little more thoughtful and they want to analyze and sort of collect these memories of these things, where a lot of Breaking Bad people just need to unwind after work.
Right.
Or burn through a Sunday or something,
Yeah, and you're never going to just go, hey, I'm going to watch episode 6 of season 3 of Mad Men. Just on a whim. You're not just going to go back to that moment.
Yeah. They're not contained. That there's a through line where the ending of each episode is in the beginning of the next episode or something.
Yes, the ideas just float over the top of it for a long time.
Yeah. Well, plotting wise, that's what the writers started doing. Is the trend is so Next Gen in every series back then, beginning, middle, end all contained there. And what they did with Lost, they started to discover if you move the ending, if you cut the episode before it ends, and then the very beginning of the next episode, you give the ending away.
Right.
The viewer's like, oh, okay, good. They feel very satisfied that they just finished the last episode. And then you have to quickly reintroduce the episode you're currently in, and then you cut that ending off before you get to it.
Yeah.
You basically keep moving the goalpost, and that's a way to kind of keep people on the edge of their seats, so they're not contained as much.
Right. That's essentially what Breaking Bad did as well.
Exactly.
It's you cut at the climax, and then you don't show your reveal until the next episode.
Exactly. All it did was shift it.
Yep. No, I totally agree with that. It's there's it's just a weird sort of difference between. The other thing I was thinking is that what's funny about, because I look at the dates, I mentioned the dates of all these Star Trek episodes as they come out, and the show took like weird breaks. Like it would take 4 weeks off at a time, even just mid-season. I don't know if it was the holiday season and they were changing things up.
Yeah.
But what's funny about it is when you watch them in a row like this, it's super surprising how you kind of needed to watch this week by week so that you would forget that we did this exact thing 3 episodes ago.
Right.
Which is sort of bizarre. It's like, it's a lot of the same. It's like, oh, here's another holodeck episode. We had one of those 6 episodes ago. It's time for another one of these.
Yeah.
Or, Geordi's got some problem, or Data does this. It's just, it's nice to have the break in time, which other shows sort of, when you binge watch something like Breaking Bad or Mad Men, doesn't really get affected by it.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, while I have you here, I do. When why didn't you call me or somebody to do a podcast for those 2 horrible Geordi episodes? I think Tana would have loved the one where he was trying to date that girl and he was just striking out. That was such a horrible episode that you needed Tweedledum there.
It's a good question. The answers would be I was trying to catch up because I fell off schedule.
I know.
The other thing that would be is that I do regret that one because, all right, I'll put in my annotations here. I think I overrated The Enemy. I gave it a 4. I think it deserves a 3, so I've adjusted that. I'm going to give that one a 3. Booby Trap is still a 2, and Booby Trap is much worse than I remember it being, which is weird.
It was almost worth it for the joke of Data saying, "I was never a little boy."
Worf saying it, right? Or he didn't never played. Or Data said that Worf never played with boys or something. It's that one. I think the high concept of the ship gets stuck in a booby trap kind of pulls me in on that one, and what actually happens. Honest to God, the best part of that episode that they never mention is when Picard walks in and Geordi introduces him to a holodeck character, and Picard looks at him like he's lost his fucking mind.
Yeah.
That is something the show was not interested in pursuing, but that was the only interesting thing about that episode.
Well, he had one where he and Riker were macking on that girl in season 1 or 2.
Sonia Gomez?
Yeah, is that who that was?
Well, she was the one in Q who spills the hot chocolate all over Picard. Was it her?
Okay, we haven't gotten there yet. There's one where Riker is playing jazz and he asks for an audience.
That's season 1 with the Binars, the 11001001. It's
right.
It's Picard and Riker though who are macking on the holodeck woman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, Picard and Riker. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it is. But yeah, I'll be sure to give people a call. It's much better to have people on the podcast than it is just me talking to myself.
It is, man. I mean, seriously, it's if you're going to take the time to record and get the equipment and ignore your wife for an hour, you might as well get a buddy that you can joke around about it with. Otherwise, people are you're burning through it and you're not interested in chatting about it as much. So,
right? Yeah.
I still listen to them because I'm a fan, but yeah, you should have called me or Tanner or Clay or something.
Absolutely. I'll keep it in mind.
That's my guilt trip.
No worries. I think everyone else, the feedback has always been, you should always have a person on. You shouldn't do it by yourself. They'll gently let me down, be like, I still enjoyed it, but you should really have someone else on there.
Oh, it's not your fault. I mean,
no.
It's just how it is,
It is. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, Sean, for coming on and showing the world what your first 5 in Star Trek is. I assume there has been no episode before this that you think is a 5.
No, I'd go 4 on a few, but
4 on a few.
Yeah, this is my first 5.
Yeah, it's we're there's a couple more coming up. I think depending. Yeah. Here, just as a quick before we go, we'll do the moving the goalpost things. What on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is fantastic, 1 is not very good. Yeah. What is your general opinion of the Klingon stories that we're about to get into shortly?
Oh, why don't you answer first? Let me think about it. I
am so torn about that. I think I respect the idea of the Klingon stories more than I enjoy them.
Yeah.
I'd have to give them like a 6 out of 10, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the case where I think the episode might be better than I give it credit for. It might be better than I enjoy watching it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I don't think the Klingons are such a one-dimensional, just super alpha aliens beating their chests, somehow, putting that aside in their history and building spaceships, becoming really smart.
Right, yeah.
But it's like they took all these spaceships from us, killed a bunch of civilizations, took all their ships, repainted them as warbirds.
Yeah.
And then I was like, how did you mongrels, you idiots, how the hell did you guys invent warp drive in between getting drunk, killing each other, and doing all the other shit that you guys do? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And even down to in Code of Honor, the whole thing behind that is that there's this little organism eating away at the hull of the Klingon ship. The Enterprise is trying to tell them about it. Yeah. When the Klingons learn about it, Riker's like, why don't we just fix it? They're like, we don't know how to fix it. So they can't. They obviously don't seem very good at even surviving when you're out in space. It is a weird sort of construct.
Yeah. I think we've got a lot more science at our disposal now where we know if there was a civilization that could travel to the stars, they probably would have figured this out or that out, and you wouldn't see them acting this way or that way, They sort of are more knowledgeable now, and when you look back, back in the 90s, I don't think they really considered these things.
No. The computer was. It's kind of surprising how accurate they were with the computer when you consider like how early this was.
It's true. Yeah, Data's got Bluetooth basically.
Yep.
Computer and
touchscreen is kind of advanced for what they're doing.
And cheaper to create.
Yeah, so much cheaper to create. Their sort of tablets don't really hold up, but outside of that, everything's fine. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you for coming back on and talking about this with me.
Hey, man. I'm glad you dug the episode.
Absolutely, I did. It's a 5. We both give it 5s. It's The Defector. Everyone should watch it. It's a great episode.
I give our friendship a 5.
We're on a 10-point scale. This is a Klingon relationship.
It's a season 2 5, not a season 3 5.
Cool, Sean. Thank you very much.
All right, man. See you later.
See you later.